When you're on a low-carb diet, one of the most challenging meals of the day can be breakfast. You want something that's sustainable and going to keep you filled all morning long, but you also want something that's simple and quick. Today's recipe is for low-carb biscuits with no flour gravy. This is perfect for your morning breakfast. It checks all the right boxes. The biscuits are loaded with protein, so they keep you full throughout the whole morning. The gravy is very limited ingredients, so makes it nice and quick and simple. And so it just makes it perfect for anybody's breakfast morning. If you want something good and sustainable, this biscuit and gravy recipe is perfect for you. And if you want printable versions of these, then check out my website at janetsdeliciouslowcarbkitchen.com. You can find printable versions of both of these recipes and other goodies there for you. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the little notification bell. That way you can be notified every time I put out a new video. And while you do that, let's get cooking. For the biscuits, preheat your oven to 400 degrees and line a large baking sheet with parchment paper. In a large mixer bowl, add 1½ cups of almond flour or seed flour, 1/4 cup psyllium husk powder, make sure it's the powder, not the whole husk, 3 tablespoons ground flaxseed or flaxseed meal, 1 tablespoon coconut flour, 1 tablespoon baking powder, and 1 teaspoon salt. Whisk these together until they're fully combined. Add 2 large room temperature eggs. Make sure they are room temperature, helps them to mix in easier. 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, and 1 tablespoon of cider vinegar. This just helps with the rising of the dough. If you don't have the cider vinegar in, it doesn't rise as well. Beat on low for 30 seconds or until the dry ingredients are all wet. Scrape down the sides and change your attachment on your standing mixer to a dough hook attachment. If you don't have a dough hook attachment, it's okay. A paddle attachment will be just fine, or a hand mixer will be just fine. I like to use the dough hooks because it gets in there and really smooths your dough out well, but it turns out just as well with the paddle attachment if you don't have the dough hook. Once you've changed out to the dough hook attachment, if you have it, then beat on medium for 30 seconds or until everything is fully combined. Scrape down the sides of the bowl again and push all the dough to the center of the bowl. Let the dough rest for about 10 minutes. This just helps the flours and the psyllium husk powder to be able to absorb the extra moisture and helps the dough get more thick. That way it's more sturdy. Once it's set for 10 minutes, give the dough a gentle stir just to make sure that the moisture has been absorbed by the psyllium husk powder. The dough will still be wet, but it should be able to be scooped out and hold a shape. Scoop the dough out 1/4 cup at a time using a lightly floured 1/4 cup measuring cup. Make sure it is very lightly floured. You don't want to use a lot of flour because you don't want extra flour getting in your dough. But it does need to be lightly floured because, as I said, this dough is wet. If you don't lightly flour the measuring cup before using it, the dough can stick. So just make sure you very, very lightly flour it. Continue scooping the dough out onto your prepared baking sheet until all the dough has been scooped. Lightly dust your hands with flour and shape each dough scoop into a tight ball. again, make sure you just very lightly flour your hand. You don't want a bunch of excess flour on your dough, just enough to where the dough won't stick to your hands. Also keep in mind when you're shaping these that this dough has no gluten and no yeast in it. So however you shape these biscuits, that's pretty much how they're going to turn out looking after they're done baking. So you don't want to flatten them a lot. You want them to be nice and round in a nice round ball. That way they still have a nice puff to them and they're not a flat biscuit. Once you've shaped all the biscuit dough, then put it in the oven and bake it for 10 to 12 minutes or until it's just lightly golden around the edges. Let them rest on the pan for about 5 minutes. Then transfer them to a wire rack to cool. For the no flour gravy, place a medium saucepan over medium heat. Then add 1 tablespoon of room temperature butter, a half cup of water or broth of your choice, and a half cup of heavy whipping cream. Stir them together just lightly, just enough to combine the water and the cream. Then lightly sprinkle seasoned salt and seasoned pepper over the cream mixture. If you're using broth instead of the water, do not use the salt because it'll be too salty if you do that. So if you're using broth, then you don't need the salt. If you're using just the water, then you need the salt. Add 1 teaspoon of chicken bouillon granules if you're not using broth. If you're using broth, then you don't need the chicken bouillon granules. This is just for if you're just using water and you need to flavor the broth. So whatever flavor of bouillon granules you put in there, that's the flavor that your gravy's going to be. I'm using chicken bouillon granules here, so my gravy's going to turn out with a chicken flavor. If you want a beef flavor, then you would use beef bouillon cubes or beef broth. Add a half teaspoon onion powder and a half teaspoon garlic powder. These seasonings are optional. They just give your gravy more flavor. You can change them or adjust them as you want according to your taste. Add a half teaspoon of xanthan gum and stir gently just to make sure that the seasonings and the xanthan gum are fully combined and that the butter is completely melted. Bring the mixture to a low boil over medium heat. Then reduce the heat to low and simmer about 10 minutes or until the gravy reaches the desired consistency that you want. The longer you let it simmer, the thicker it's going to get. So if you're wanting a thicker gravy, then let it simmer a little bit longer. If you're wanting a thinner gravy, then let it simmer a little less. 10 minutes for me is perfect for the texture. Also, while it's simmering, make sure you keep an eye on it and keep it stirred occasionally. You don't have to stand there and stir it the whole time, but you do want to make sure that you do check on it and stir it every few minutes just to make sure it's not sticking around the edges or burning on the bottom or anything. So just make sure you keep an eye on it. Don't just walk away and leave it for the 10 minutes. Make sure you keep checking on it and stir it occasionally. Once the gravy reaches the desired consistency, then remove it from the heat and let it cool to serving temperature. Serve it with your biscuits, or you can use it over meats or anytime you need gravy. This recipe works perfect for it. There you go. Low-carb, keto-friendly biscuits and no flour gravy. Eat and enjoy. And that's our recipes of the day. I hope you enjoyed them both. If you did, hit the like and the subscribe button. Leave me a comment if you want to. Let me know if there's any recipes that you'd like to learn how to make, and I'll do what I can to get those out there for you. And as always, keep cooking.